when I was interviewing 8-9 years ago now, I told my firm, only a few more years before I'm licensed and start my own firm. I'm surprised they still gave me the job. So I'm very curious about these types of things too. And I think a lot of people are, and we'll have a great lively conversation. We have 3 panelists with us. So we have Deborah here. Matt is online somewhere. Hey, Matt, we're in his office. So thank you for hosting us. And then Kurt as well is here in person. So the idea is we're going to give 5 or 10 minutes for everybody to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their story and about starting their own firms, and then try to turn this more into a roundtable discussion where we can field questions from the audience and continue the conversation. So let's start. Kurt, if you want to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody here and there. My name is Kurt Lavinson. I'm an architect and have been for a while. And my path into this kind of veered through construction. I guess that's sort of like my signature characteristic. I don't know. I always knew not always, but I knew I wanted to be an architect. But I kind of always had to work when I was in school, and because I had a history of like painting houses and doing handyman stuff to scratch together money, I veered toward construction while I was in school. And I also worked for architects. And when I got out of school, I just realized I enjoyed the construction part more. I just liked kind of being outdoors and, I don't know, making stuff and seeing the results at the end of the day was more gratifying for me than what was at the time. Working for architects involved a lot of erasing and rewriting notes and details. But I didn't lose touch with it, but I did construction. So when I came out of school, I got a general contractor's license and worked in the field as a designer builder rather than working for architects. But I associated with architects. I had friends who were getting their licenses, and I had people I had worked for. And so I had that contact that would lead to like the internship, the validation of the time to qualify toward the ARE. And so what I did is I did construction for like 15 years, and I went from loving it to hating it because it's really chaotic. A lot of the same mistakes are made over and over. You end up putting out a lot of the same fires over and over. And I just started longing to spend more time with like the architects and the engineers that I dealt with, and less time with the contractors and the subs who just did the same dumb stuff over and over, even though I still love them. And so I kind of let my construction business wind down, and I got all my time certified, and I took the ARE, actually the last paper and pencil ARE. I'm old enough, I took the last one in California in '96. And then got my architect's license, and I sort of had a clientele already from being a designer builder for years. So I wasn't really starting cold. And I imagine for some people, it's more like you're in an office, like you were saying, and then you're going to leave, and maybe the office will throw you some work, or, it's nice to have work coming from somewhere. Sometimes people leave because they get a big job, either through family or friends or a contact, and that's when they make the leap. I had clients, so I could make the leap. I also, this is important, I also was able to live on a less dependable income since I was changing businesses, because by that time I had some real estate equity, because I had, worked on a house and fixed it up and sold it, and then got married. My wife and I bought another one. And that equity, which I just encourage highly for all of you, like we have the contacts, the knowledge, you got to make it happen, because one, you might make more money on the property you own than on your business. You wouldn't be the first. And the other is, it just gives you like a kind of stability. You don't want to be desperate, especially at the beginning. It's so easy to like take a client you had a bad feeling about, or work for too cheap, or just give yourself away because you're scared. So it's interesting, because I think being in business for yourself is more about vulnerability than it is about your design skills. Like, I assume most of us are good designers, but I know that most of us have trouble with the kind of fear and anxiety that come up when things go wrong, when clients are mad at you, when a contractor gets mad at you or builds something wrong and then blames you. There's a lot of chaos, and you need to find ways to have like a stable sense of yourself and your security. And I just happen to think financial equity is part of that. The other part of it is your personality. You got to really take stock of yourself. Like, how are you with conflict? Because when you're alone or with your best friend designing, it's hard. Design's hard. We all know that already. But you still control most of it when it's like on your desk. But when you let that thing out in the wild and it goes for construction, you just control less and less. The stakes get higher and higher. And everybody gets nervous. The contractor's nervous about getting paid. You're nervous about getting paid. Clients are nervous. You're going to find something wrong with their house, or the budget's going to go crazy. And I happen to believe it's really important for the architects to lead at that time, like going into business for yourself, actually even being a project manager in a firm, project architect or manager. You really need to be like a beacon of leadership. You need to be steady while things are going haywire, because things like will go wrong. And what I teach my clients is they will of course go wrong. I don't promise that things will go right. And then, through good collaboration with them, good communication with them and with the contractor and with the client. And I'll talk more about that in a minute because I don't want to go on too long, but I have some important things to say about communication. But if you appear too flustered or afraid, it's fine not to know things. Nobody has to be an expert in everything. And you really shouldn't try to control everything and be an expert in everything, because everyone will know you're faking it. And all it is just reacting to your own fear. But if you can ask for help and stay cool and put out the fires and find solutions, your strength and value and control and ability to guide a project where you want it to go will just skyrocket. It will just skyrocket. And if you do the opposite and be afraid and disappear and say, oh, it's somebody else's fault, everyone will get mad at you because you've run away in a time when they needed your guidance. And I just have seen too many architects do that. So it's one of my biggest pieces of advice is to stay present, stay in the fray, and ask for help. Don't try to be perfect. See what other people think should be done. Ask the contractor. They know a lot. And collaborate. It's a team. And I'll come back to team and communication. That's enough for me.
How's the audio on the far end? Great. Thank you, Kurt and Deborah. Yeah, please.
What was the question?
See, I talked too long.
No, what
knew
you
it.
said was so great. I mean, I really liked what you said about, my husband has been in business for 40 years and he used to make bagels in San Francisco. And one of his landlords said, well, I think I want to sell the building. And he had a partner and he said, do you want to buy it? And his partner said, I don't know, should we buy it? And they said, I don't know. And they did it. And it's true. He has made more money on the building than he's made working for forever. And
shocking.
he hasn't done that badly. He hasn't, done but it's true. And the other thing that you said, I've looked at it more about confidence, and also looking at yourself and saying, I have some worth. I know something. I know some shit here. And it's really important because clients will get mad at you. And if you really know, the problem is you have to have a lot of experience in order to feel confident. You can't, maybe some can go into just feeling confidence, but you have to assess your confidence and say, I know more than they do. I know what to do here. I know, who should be paid here and who shouldn't be paid here. And so that you have, and sometimes I can't do it alone. Sometimes I'll call up a friend who's an architect and say, what should I do here?
Mhm.
And invariably they will say, you're crazy. Why are you even calling? You know, nobody's chasing you. You know, you're okay. Your fee is okay. You need to go back and don't be worried about it, because, and that really is big, because I used to worry so much,
Mhm.
and it really, it's kind of grows, you know, it really does grow. And things were built wrong, but I try to make them work because foundations were in the wrong place, and it's like,
Mhm.
I designed it like that for a reason. I can't change it. You have to move it. And now, rather than like obsessing all night, can I change my design, which I did the working drawings for, now I just say, I'll look at it and come back much quicker without all of that guilt. And
Mhm.
you know, you have to do that. So I agree with you about equity, and or you can do it in moonlight and work in your regular job, which is so hard, because while, you know, regular job is never 9 to 5. It's like unexpected weekends and unexpected nights. So that's kind of a way to burn yourself out a little bit, but some people can manage that. But yeah, going in with either a lot of people you've worked for already that are going to want to continue work, or going in with some income is important. Yeah, I basically worked on my own because I couldn't work for anybody. I mean, I either got fired or the people didn't want me to leave. It was like 50-50. And I did not, same with you, I had the same problem with working in office for all that time and just having no say in the project, and just you're kind of confined to being in a little, you know, like a peg in a hole. Although if you continue to do that long enough, you end up with a lot of responsibility. So working for somebody isn't such a bad way to go.
Mhm.
And you have the camaraderie, and you know, firm, it's
The
thing.
issue is,
So
like, even talking about the notice issue,
Mhm.
and they say, well, you violate.
I'll stop there.
And
Yeah, we'll
both
come
of you
back.
are one-person firms, right? That might help our.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
I'm a one person.
I am too. I had employees when I had a construction business, because I had to, because things are really heavy. But, and I had employees when I started my architecture business, and it was all hand drawing. And I had people who drew for me part-time. And what happened is I sort of I liked computers, and I lucked out with the timing. I got good at AutoCAD and, you know, various software programs, and I was able to sort of, with the same amount of time, kind of do it all myself. And I, like many architects, I'm a control freak, and I liked doing it all and having control over all the results, because I want everything to be really professional and really high grade. I think that's super important, even when you're just alone working out of your house. You know, you want, like, everything you do, every email you send, every form, every drawing, don't let stuff get sloppy. Don't look like some slob working out of your house. Ever look like a top-notch, you know, professional in everything. Look, sound, and right, you know, all the time like that. And it really helps. You can still sort of be on your own. Can I say one other thing about being on your own?
Let's get Matt
Matt in.
introduced
Matt,
here.
who? Where's Matt? I don't see him.
We're in Matt's
Yeah.
building, so we gotta be.
All right.
So I think you guys said that the original question was to give the background, and I'll take a little bit different tack because I have no advice. I actually will just tell my story, and then if anyone wants advice, I can offer it as part of the question and answer. But It is a little bit different because we are a 10-person firm. We've been around for about 10 years. And the way that I got my start was, you know, you talked about moonlighting, and I was, you know, I call it my vacation from architecture was working for a 3-letter firm who will nameless, we'll leave unnamed for the moment. And, you know, I would get out at 5 and I would go off and do my own thing in the evenings. And I was kind of experimenting around with different ideas about robots and architecture. And I won an AI award and thought, okay, the design must be worth something if other people recognized it. And then I submitted a portfolio to Berkeley, went back and did my master's, came out in the midst of a recession. But around that same time, I had bought a piece of property, and I did a real estate development deal. And I bought the house, I designed it, and I built it, and I sold it in 2009. And for those of us that have been around long enough, 2009 was not a good time to sell a house. So it sold, and then a few real estate developers saw that it sold and came to me and asked me if I would be interested in working with them. And there was no work at that time, and I was kind of teaching to hold things together. And so I sort of fell into it. I had intended to do real estate development, but there wasn't much real estate development to do in 2009. So, you know, I hired a few students as the real estate developers got busier, and then they started doing more houses, and then their houses led into multiple units, and that, you know, 5, 10 units, and that led into 20 units. And, you know, now we're doing apartments that are 50 and 100 units. And it's also branched off into networking with other real estate developers. So, you know, we've done commercial work now, we've done laboratories, commercial office, but, you know, it really took off in the last 10 years. And it is a different set of parameters. I mean, I think it depends on what your objectives are. If you're thinking about starting your own practice, if you want to be a sole practitioner and you want to control everything, or if you want to run a larger firm where really you have to trust the people that you work with to control things, that because you can't be in control of everything. And it really is a collaborative process then, because you are working with other people to accomplish what, you know, you can't accomplish as one person. But yeah, that's a story. And so, you know, for us, we have a slightly larger company. So it's, in order to keep that company moving, we have to do a lot of work. And so, you know, real estate development and real estate developers as clients are guaranteed repeat business. Like I would think the challenge with single family, or I know because we do homeowner type single family residential work, is that, you know, the homeowner does a project and then they're done. And maybe if you're lucky, they tell their friends, or, you know, you get a reputation for that kind of thing. But with a real estate developer, that's their business. So they do one project and then they do another project. You know, I think that networking is one of the most important things that I know you need to be able to do in running your firm. So, you know, meeting more people and getting to know people that are trying to run their businesses, and then determining how you can help them do that. And it needs to be the right people that you're networking with. So as I say, real estate developers, that is their business. They're doing one project after another. And if you can make a good relationship with one of those people and you become their architect, you have, you know, and you take care of that person, you have guaranteed work for as long as, you know, they're maintaining their work. And that's really how we've been able to sort of survive, you know, a recession and COVID and all the rest of it. So here we are.
I agree. My firm, I did one house a while ago, and in Marin, And I kept adding to it and adding to it. There were like 4 projects in this one house. Guy went bankrupt and this developer bought it. And this was about 10 years ago. And the developer saw my name on the drawings and he called my home phone. And I happened to, I mean, I never answer, I never look at that machine, but I happened to. And he said, we want to do some stuff to the house. And I said, more. And I was really happy what he wanted to do, because he wanted to make really like do what I would have wanted to do, which is, you know, open up the ceiling and add, you know, just make it a more open plan rather than so stuffy, which the lower floors weren't, but the top floor was. And so we did that. And then he wanted to do his own house. And then his sister wanted to do her house. And then he did several more developments and brought in this other guy. And I worked for both of them. Then this other guy did developments with, so yeah, the development thing. And then my is probably 60% of my business. And it's very nice to have somebody that makes decisions and stands by them and have it built and, you know, move quickly through like that.
And what I found with the developer clients myself is that, you know, homeowners, it's their dream. They have visions of what they want to do, and they, you know, and sometimes it's not always, I mean, great, for lack of a better word. Like taste is, you know, relative. But with developers, they're like, I saw this project you did. I really like it. It sold for a lot of money. Here's my budget. Do whatever you want. Just do it fast and do it cheap. And that can be a challenge. I mean, that can suck. But, you know, the creative aspect of it, a lot of times the developers are like, I don't care. Just make sure that I can build it for, you know, not too much money. And, you know, but as far as the design goes, I like what you do your thing, which is great with developers. It's just, it's a more high volume, low fee kind of business. And a lot of times, you know, we have a saying in Barron Studio, we drew it, they blew it. And sometimes you get that from developers because they're like, give me $20,000 worth of drawings. And it's like, you haven't drawn every detail and they never call you. And then you walk out into the field and it's like, oh man, that's how you interpreted that. So that can happen, but we've had great relationships with a lot of the people we work with, and they have integrity and they'll call us, you know, maybe not too often, but I enjoy working with developers. And, you know, having done real estate development myself, those are the people that I tend to spend my time with, which is good, better than hanging out with architects as far as getting new business. So.
Yeah, from a smaller aspect, the developers I work with have an idea. They're not so like, here's $20,000, what can you do? But they're willing, after a while, they're willing to like look at my ideas and they start to trust you. That's the beauty of a repeat client, is you're not started from scratch. You guys know each other, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You know, they'll joke with you. It's nice, but yeah. But so I think, I mean, a lot of my work, which is something that you might want to talk about, or should we get, I never finish my sentence. It's very annoying to my family. I'm already on to the next thought. But anyway, the idea is that I don't do a highly detailed set of drawings, because my requirements are that anybody I work for is a reputable builder, like knows how to waterproof. And I pretty much assess the contractors people are thinking of working with, even though I say this is your choice, but this guy doesn't know what, you know, I'm not going to be responsible if you work with them. Or which I hardly ever say, but I have. And it's important that it's important to be careful about that. I don't know if, you know, on bigger projects, you can be careful of that, but even if you design, even if you detail everything, if the person doesn't know how to build to start with, you're in trouble.
It's written into our contracts. We actually have a appendix to the contract that says, if you don't use CA, don't blame us, in short.
Yeah, write something like that, or I need to write something like that. This is a permit only set of drawings. You know, architect is not responsible, which, you know, a lot of people really like to control the construction project. And I'm like, I did the drawings, you're the builder. You know, I detailed what I thought was different than industry standards, but I think I respect what your knowledge too. So if you're doing really high-end stuff, that doesn't work.
In large projects, it's a challenge too, because it's like you have to get down into the details and spend time with the drawings, or everything will go sideways in the field and you'll have just piles and piles of change orders. Like we're doing a 88 unit modular project in downtown Oakland right now. And I mean, even with the level of detail and specifications and everything else we've had in there, there's massive amounts of confusion and just RFIs all over the place and change orders. And, you know, so if you're, there's the inevitability of the construction mess that happens. But if you don't have it in there to protect yourself or to protect the client, you know, so when you get to that size and scale of building, you know, how many layers of rock and the shaft and the stair needs to be, you know, pressurized or whatever that kind of thing is, it's got to be in there. So
Right.
You can't do it that way. I mean, I had a guy call me about a high rise once, and he clearly hadn't done one before. And he was like, what is this CA in your proposal? I don't need this. And I'm like, it's a high rise. And it needs CA. It's not a single family house. So.
I'm just going to add a slightly different. So I do only residential, and it's mostly really high end, and everybody's really picky. It's exactly, Matthew, what you said you were trying to avoid. And it's very custom. It's people's homes. It's a lot of their money. And, you know, I heard you say trust. Trust is huge. Things still go wrong. I'm very careful. I was a builder. I still get it wrong. But the trust and the working it out is critical. And I also trust in my conversations with the contractors. I'm usually the first one to make architect jokes when I show up on the site, you know, just to kind of break the ice, because it can be very quiet and awkward when the architect shows up. And I want the people building it, you know, to be collaborators, not, I don't want to set up like a subordinate relationship where I'm dictating and they're either going to do it or not and hate me or not. I'd much rather everybody feel like collaborators, and, you know, they know a lot. Even when they do stuff wrong, you can often dig through it. You know, why'd you do this? What were you thinking? Oh, do you realize the water is going to come in this way also? And they'll go, oh, well, we better take that apart and, you know, lap it the other way. And I'll be like, yes, okay, that's where I was hoping we would go, without me showing up just saying, you know, that's wrong, redo it. And the other thing I just want to add is, I've talked to too many attorneys who will tell you that we're putting these little clauses in your contracts. I do it too. They won't really protect you if the shit hits the fan. They just won't.
I mean, this is,
You're the pro, you're the licensed professional. You will be drawn in. And one of the issues will be, what were you thinking that you could just not show up and, you know, keep an eye on this? It's a very dangerous, it can be done, but it's very dangerous territory.
well, it also doesn't matter if you show up. I mean, we have all the lawsuits that we're in right now are.
Here's my answer. I'm not in any.
Well, Yeah, but you don't have how many unit projects, you know, it's like,
Oh, nothing compared to yours. Yeah.
well, I mean, this is the big projects are the problem. And this is, by the way, if we're talking to people about starting your own firm, ask yourself, how big of a project do you want to do? How big of a company you want to build? Because when you start doing these bigger projects, the headaches increase. And the lawsuits really generally stuff went wrong. It had nothing to do with us. They fired the contractor, brought in a new contract. It was a mess. And it didn't matter how many times we were out in the field. We were in the field doing our CA, and you know, indemnity clauses, none of that matters. You get named in the lawsuit, boom, no matter what, if they're
Right.
sideways. And one of the important, more meta questions that one needs to ask is, you know, if you want to grow the firm, you know, you can potentially make more money, do bigger projects, whatever your ambition is in that. Understand that, you know, when you're growing a company to that size, you're probably doing less and less architecture. You're doing more and more running of the company. And, you know, that can be okay. I mean, a large part of my day-to-day is creative aspects of the work, but it's also looking at HR and payroll and invoicing and, you know, accounts receivable and what's the future of the firm and how many networking events do I need to attend and how much work do we need to make next month's billing. And, you know, you're looking at a lot of things that aren't just sketching the sort of romantic ideal of the architect. So, you know, or dealing with lawsuits at that level. I mean, every large project magnifies those problems. I miss the days when we did single family houses and you walk out there and you'd be like, well, hey, this duct can't run through this beam. And it's like, oh, we'll just turn it that way. And you're done, you know, and it's like, it's not a $200,000 ordeal and everybody's pulling their hair out, flipping out. So it's an important question, something to think about if you're starting your own.
Yeah, I've actually heard the opposite about, you know, how many times you go out to the job and your liability from, but I don't know. I mean, I thought about whether or not I wanted to mention this because I've often heard you have to detail, let me present the two options. You have to detail everything and you have to go out to the job enough to know what's going on. The other is, and I know a lot of people that do this, you have to only do a permit set of drawings, which sometimes has detailing in it. Berkeley requires details, but nobody else does, except for in terms of how things look. Like for design review, Oakland wants detailings of railings and windows to make, you know, porches and windows and stuff like that. But so I just don't, being a girl, I just don't feel that comfortable with detailing. I mean, I know how the details look, and I know how waterproofing is done, and I've done some construction, but not enough to feel as comfortable with building as I do with designing, which doesn't mean I just, you know, first thing I do when I have a design is call up the structural engineer and say, is this going to work? I mean, I care that things work. And I care that if I do, you know, a pitched roof, that I know how I'm going to insulate it and waterproof it. I know how, and I put notes to that, but I don't do a lot of detailing.
Well, it's thing.
You know, all I'm saying is there are two schools.
Yeah.
But
You also said that you work with reputable builders, though. I mean, I
very important. And if you work on a larger scale and things are bid out, then you have to a larger scale, you have to detail.
I mean, but I think that actually the takeaway here is more like and I've had, by the way, I have colleagues that are like, you know, Matt, the best thing to do is just don't get insurance because then no one will sue you because as an architect, you don't have anything. But, you know, there are there are many different ways of approaching it. But all I'm saying is, no matter how you approach it, if you detail the hell out of it, if you're heavy on CA, if you work with a reputable builder, all those are solutions. If stuff goes wrong in the field and there is a lawsuit, your contract probably isn't going to protect you. They're going to come after you. Best thing to do is not have the problem in the first place, however you have to do it. There are a number of ways, right, to protect yourself. You know, a lot of developers will just fix the problem on a house to avoid a potential lawsuit, you know, and so if you're working with somebody like that, then you're probably in good shape. We've taken a lot of risk in our practice in the past, and you know, we flew fast and loose. I mean, it was all very shoestring as we went, and on a number of levels, there's things that I will never tell anybody, but but you know, we got lucky and didn't get sued until we had insurance, and then you know, it happens. I mean, that everybody tells me, like, you know, I have friends that have big firms they've inherited, and they're like, yeah, welcome to the, you know, welcome to the big, put on the big boy pants, you know, this is, you know, now you're here, you got sued, which I don't know. I don't know if that's like how the pants I want to be wearing.
I know I have a sizable list of questions. I'm sure a lot of other people
Okay.
do. I'd love to open it up for questions from the audience and also stories. I think there's probably other people in this meeting, in this roundtable, that also have started their own firms or have stories that they would like to share as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a question for the panel, but if you do have a question for any of the panelists, feel free to do that as well. So.
For the remote people, do we want them to just raise their hand and we can call on them maybe?
Yeah, so Tim Nystrom is also on remote. He is one of the other leaders from Young Architects Forum, as well as Jamie here in the room. If anyone online wants to ask a question or anything, you could raise your hand or put anything in the chat, and Tim will make sure we hear you and let you talk. And if anyone here in the room wants to, feel free to raise your hand or say out loud. And yeah, go ahead, you want to start?
Sure. Well, we're just talking about lawsuits and risks.
Can you say your name first?
Yes, sorry.
Please.
My name is Marcia Adair. I just opened my company. It's called Sustainable AF. And I've met Tim. We both work in the same company in the past. My biggest concern is risk, obviously, and I'm worried about liability and about losing all my family's investments and stuff like that. And Matt was saying that it's unavoidable to get sued. So I have two questions, like how common it is, which is for everybody, how common it is to get sued in our line of work, and how to avoid this risk.
Can I go first on that? So there's no avoiding risk. Like if you're gonna, Matt kind of nailed it, you know, in the early days especially, you just kind of need to take risks, but there's risk in everything, right? Like climbing a mountain, falling in love, having kids, like there's huge risk in all of this, all of the stuff that makes life is risk, right? If you're alive, there's a risk you're going to die. So that's an oversimplification, but it is kind of at the heart of the human experience. So you need to make your peace with it, and being in business for yourself and being an architect like are double risk, and yet it's also really fun, just like those other things. It makes it kind of exciting. And there are rewards, right? There's the whole like nothing ventured, nothing gained. And the best you can do is be careful, don't be foolish, right? Like it's a high wire act and you need a net. And insurance is probably the most important net, but you can't get it till you're licensed. Are you licensed?
Yes.
Okay, so with a license, you can get insurance. And if you have any assets, like we started by saying, have equity, have real estate. So there's none of this, no one's going to sue me because I have nothing. They're going to sue you and take it all, right? So that's why you have insurance. You just have to be well insured, and that's a cost of doing business.
Is that general liability?
No, actually, you need two kinds of insurance. General liability is like just for having a business, like for your cars, and if you go in somebody's house and knock the vase over. But what you need is errors and omissions, which is malpractice, which costs 10 times as much as general liability, right? General liability is hundreds, E&O is thousands, but you just have to do it. It's a cost of doing business. It's foolish not to.
I mean, I would say that when we first started out, and I'm not advising this, but I really did have nothing. I mean, I've done real estate deals, but at the time of startup, there was nothing. And so, we were doing very low risk kind of projects. We were remodeling for developers and stuff. So I didn't have insurance for, I didn't have the space. I had a laptop when I started, and I didn't have employees, I had consultants. So all that was risk that I chose to take, that was calculated, and I was lucky. Insurance, I would also recommend getting it as soon as you reasonably can. And especially once you start taking on projects like high-end residential, higher risk, multifamily residential, higher risk. The bigger the projects, the more complex, the bigger the fees, the more the risk. And so the sooner you have insurance, really the better. Because especially if you do have something to protect. I mean, I honestly had very little, so.
There's a
Donald has a question.
I want to say one more thing about risk.
Yeah.
There's a personal side to risk too, which is, it comes back to communication. So you need to really stay sort of close to your clients and the builder and help the team have a good outcome, because you're kind of all in it together. And any lawyer, not any, but many lawyers will tell you, people usually don't sue somebody they like, or that they know well, or that they feel is really trying to help. And they will be much quicker to sue someone who they feel is either causing problems or avoiding trying to solve them. And that comes down to communication. Like, it's a team. One of your jobs is to keep the team together. That's my residential architect version. Matt's is probably more like it's business. These things are going to go wrong with the developers. They're going to choose bankruptcy or choose a lawsuit just as quickly as they might choose another avenue. And that's just a fact of life too. But at my end, in the residential end, it's very much about keeping it as a collaboration and taking care of the team. And that prevents sort of lawsuits in all directions, or it really cuts down. It's managing the risk at a kind of a personal level. That's because I do like personal architecture.
Donald, did you want to say something?
I could say a couple of things. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
I would say a few things from the perspective of someone who has started a firm, and I could maybe share some of the lessons that I've kind of learned and thinking about, because I was at one time young and wondering how to do it. I just turned 70. I'm actually trying to retire. As if you're an architect, you got to get the projects done first. So I don't know if it's gonna be 1 or 2 years before I finish everything, but that's my track. I started my own business when I was 37. So, and I had always wanted to do that. I did it sooner than I thought, because once in my life, I got extremely angry with the people I was working with and I quit. However, what Matt said about firm size is, I think, a good starting place. Do you want to be a big firm or a smaller firm? That will just characterize your approach to many things. Me, I kind of wanted to be a smaller firm. I wanted to be an architect since I was 7. And so some of the things I learned, one, if you're not trying to go out and work and start your business tomorrow, and it's like a little bit off into the future, one of the lessons that I found valuable was not staying in one firm for too long. Spend a couple of years in one firm and move on to another. There's a lot of different benefits about that, but you learn different ways of doing things. You learn how to do some things in one firm that you won't learn how to do in the other. And here's also a really key thing. You go to different firms and they will be doing different kinds of work. And it's like giving you more tools to work with. So consequently, I worked in firms that did residential, multifamily, commercial, others as well, hospitals, police stations, the whole thing. But what it meant was that when I did go out on my own, I was able to take on projects that maybe I otherwise would not have been able to do. And so I built my practice really on 3 different kinds of work: residential, commercial, and industrial. And the benefit of that, economically speaking, is that these kinds of industries don't all go up and down at the same time. So there were times, when I was doing fine and other architects who were in residential were having worries. And other times when commercial was not so good, but I was picking up some residential. So I would kind of recommend that. I also, Matt said he never worked with any or hung out with architects, but what I found very helpful when I first started out, again, I'm just loose, I don't know what to do, hanging out at the AIA and meeting other architects. And the small firm forum actually went back that far. And I actually got some of my early jobs as helping other architects out with their drawings. I knew I'm a good designer like all the rest of you. I do very detailed and thorough drawings. I didn't know anything about accounting or marketing, but you can read about that stuff. It's not a big deal. But working with the other architects, you get one job, like a lot of you are talking about the fact that one job leads to another and then that leads to another. It worked with me for architects. Pretty soon, one architect, I end up doing some drawing for an engineer. Some guy's building burns down. I help the engineer do the drawings. That guy spends $750,000 to buy 17 acres of and $200,000 of industrial space, and he's a client for 25 years. So, and that all came about by meeting an architect eventually back at the AIA. Lastly, I would just say, I've never hired a lawyer. I write my own contracts. I learned how to write a contract because at the small firm forum years ago, we all brought in our contracts and copies of them, and we shared them. And I just picked out the good stuff and made my contract and tweaked it a little. And I guess the last thing is, I have car insurance and that I've never had liability insurance. I've always thought of it as an attractive nuisance. It's not cheap. Mainly it was an attractive nuisance. And also not having the insurance will keep you on your toes. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Did you also have something?
Hey, yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, yeah, a lot of great questions, especially about risk and liability. Kind of wish there was an attorney in the room that we could talk to, but it's, I think that's all part of the risk of owning your firm and moving forward with it. So, I went to Cal Poly and really thought I got a decent architecture degree and education, but as a sole proprietor and moving into what I'm hoping to be a small firm or growing my business here, one of the risks and one of the things I always think about is how to run a business, because we didn't get a real formal education where I went to school in terms of how to run the business, the accounting side. Donald had mentioned, just recently, it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like it's a step that I'm just not ready to take in terms of growing a business. Do you guys have any recommendations or resources and tools, or is it more of a learn by doing kind of thing where you just kind of figure it out as you go and then, just learn from your mistakes and learn from the things that are successful? So any insights on growing a business and maybe tackling some of the sides of running a business that we just didn't get a formal education? The architecture comes and you can get clients and those kinds of things, but just, how do you manage and be efficient at what you do on the back end and behind the scenes? Thank you.
I can jump in.
Well, I was gonna say, for the other thing that nobody talked about with insurance is I am underinsured, which means that my insurance company will fight for me. And that's all they have to do, which means I could still be personally sued. But it's just, that's what I've chosen to do, because every year it's like, should I pay this money? And every year I do. But I've chosen to be underinsured because I've assessed the risk in a single family residential. And I've never had really an issue. So, but the big day could come and then I'll wish I had put in that money. But it's kind of like I use all these protections like everybody was talking about. But as far as, I think you can for, bigger firms, you really have to have more heavy duty accounting systems. But my accountant really wanted me to use QuickBooks. I use Quicken. Quicken works just as well. It's so easy. You can get the program. They will talk you through it. You can create categories. They even have tax categories. You can create, stuff for each of your clients, which I didn't used to do it. I always used to do it just by pencil on a big sheet of paper until like last year. But
Till last year.
Well,
Welcome to the 21st century.
I decided what was happening is I was trying to do my husband's business as well. And I tried to use a bookkeeper. I found that a disaster. They never knew what was going on. Then I tried to use this online service, Benchmark or Bench Accounting. And I just finally decided it was much easier for me to do myself. And so I converted his business and my business into Quicken. And it has all the information I need. Very simple to do. Doesn't take that long. There's a lot. I just am a shortcut taker. And it satisfies my accountant. It helps me. It's fine. Bigger firms, you probably can't do that. You probably need somebody to come in and really keep track of all of your, keep track of all your receipts for everything, et cetera, et cetera.
I think it's important to do your own at the beginning.
Yeah.
I tried to pawn mine off on my accountant early in my career, and he wouldn't do it. And he said, I recommend to all my small business clients that they do their own pick and shovel work for several years. Because I think if you're going to be successful, this is him talking, you need to kind of have a gut feeling for where your business is at and your money and your clients, like at all times. You kind of need a gut sense of that. And he had heard too many stories of people who started small and delegated immediately to an accountant or a bookkeeper, and were just always surprised that they never had any money, no matter how hard they worked. And so his approach was do it yourself first, QuickBooks. I did Quicken, then I did QuickBooks, which I still do. And I'll help you as it gets bigger. I'll recommend a bookkeeper if it's bigger, you don't want to manage payroll, but start yourself with, one of those programs so that you have a feel for it. Because then if nothing else, you'll have a better understanding of the reports that are handed back to you by bookkeeper or an accountant, and you won't be one of those stories where you're shocked that you're pedaling as fast as you can and you never have anything extra left over.
Yeah, you have to, it's not just as simple as I'm gonna do Quicken. If you have employees, then you have to do QuickBooks or something else. I hand my stuff to my accountant, and I'm well aware of what I'm going to be paying in taxes and what I'm going to be paying for Social Security, which is really high. So it's not like you can you have to kind of know what's happening, but that doesn't mean you have to use the most sophisticated this and
Right.
that. So
Right.
I
You need a
don't,
gut understanding.
you have to kind of understand the entire picture. And I don't find a bookkeeper or, I found it easier to do the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to charge enough money too, you guys. Big mistake most architects make. We never charge enough. We give away all kinds of time. We accept all sorts of extras without charging for them. I feel like I was lucky because I came to this through construction. There's a lot more money in play in construction and a lot more candor about what stuff costs, and I need to get paid, we need this money by this date, and it made me very comfortable with handling money, asking for money, not being willing to stop until we settle up a change order or some extra money, and it made me more comfortable with insisting that I get paid, and it made me more comfortable with insisting I get paid well, because I saw how many people were paid well and did a bad job. And I also saw how many people did a good job and weren't paid well. And I don't think either of those are good avenues. So it was easy for me, it wasn't easy, it was incredibly hard. It's easy now, 30 years later, to say it's easy, to like ask for what you're worth. And don't lose track of that, and don't give yourself away. And the thing is, and you'll read this in every sort of business self-help thing, any client that tries to drive your price down won't respect you when you give in. It's not like they'll go, great, I love him or her, and they gave me such a deal, I'm going to hire him again. What they do is they squeeze you on that job, and then when they have like a real job, they go hire a real architect that charges them 3 times as much and layers them in paperwork that doesn't really add value. And for some reason, they feel okay about that. So you have to, people will treat you as you teach them to treat you. You have to, respect yourself and treat yourself well and insist that others do that. You also then have to reciprocate with that. Like, don't squeeze others, right? Don't try to beat up the contractor and get them to do stuff for free. Don't try to beat up people who work for you or consultants who work for you. It's a, this is a reap what you sow kind of situation.
I mean, I don't know what I'm thinking back to your question, which is, what do you need to set up? I think you need to get your first job and then keep track of how much you're making and how much you're spending, however you want to do it. I mean,
learn by doing.
Yeah, I did it on ledger paper for years. I did it on those tablets of old college.
Yeah, I mean, and then, this is getting old. You don't need to, I don't think, unless you're going to start a bigger firm right away and you get these big jobs right away, that you need to worry about. But that's just my way of doing things.
Well, I'll jump in here for a second, because what I can say is that, if that's the direction you want to go, because I didn't know either when I was starting out, and I did it the same way. I was on Excel and then QuickBooks, and now we have Big Time because we have staff. And, I have a bookkeeper, and I have a CPA, and I have a litigation attorney, and I have a non-litigation attorney, and I have, but when I was going through this, I would say the one thing that I did, or a couple things, there are a lot of books, and if you're there in person, you can walk through the library next to you, and there are some books in there that are about, all those aspects. But I hired somebody to help teach me business. I hired a consultant, because when you're going through it and you're looking at multipliers on employees, and you're looking at overhead, and you're looking at software costs for 8 seats of Revit, and you're trying to figure out your budget for marketing, and you're attending events, and you have a PR person, or you're spending time on building your website and submitting projects to Art Daily, and you're trying to promote yourself, and it becomes multifold beyond just accounting. I mean, bigger companies will use Deltek, and we've looked at that, and it gives you a dashboard and all sorts of metrics, so you can kind of see where the company is going. But there are a lot of things that I think you need to learn and understand. If you want to, and when you get to that point, there are resources that you can seek out. Again, either as consultants, but it's hard. I do think it's hard. I was pretty lucky. I think that a CPA, a bookkeeper, they're like, I'm going to do my job. You give me the numbers and I'll calculate your taxes, or I'll balance your books, or whatever. But nobody's telling you, what should you be looking at when guiding your company. I mean, you've got backlog, pipeline, all these things that you really need to be looking at. Do I need to be looking at projects immediately to fill gaps, like because we're slow this month, or can I spend time looking 3 months out for the next whale project or whatever? So, there are a lot of things that you're looking at to kind of make big picture decisions around. And I think that, I was very fortunate to be introduced to a guy that helped me with that stuff. And, I don't know that there's anybody you can look up in a phone book. I mean, even if you want to promote the company, we've talked about insurance and risk. We've talked about, kind of finance and accounting, but winning business and kind of building the practice and getting a reputation, and how do you promote that, is a really tricky thing to me, because you could advertise, you can try to submit your projects for press, and like if you get into Arc Record or something, is any client going to see that, or are other architects going to see that, right? So how networking is huge, making relationships, like golf, whatever, cycling. I mean, there are different strategies, but that's a big one. And like I say, I was fortunate enough to meet somebody that kind of helped me with all the running the business side of things, but it can be somewhat nebulous. Like you don't necessarily know that you're always making the right decision when it comes to how you're spending your money, or how you're trying to grow the firm, or how you're trying to promote the firm. A lot of it can become sort of self-congratulatory on that front, like, oh, look what a great job I did. I got in this publication, but did I get any new work out of it? So, yeah, I would say that, finding somebody to help. I mean, it could even be somebody like one of us, if you find a mentor that would sit down with you once a week over coffee and be like, that's great. I have, peers that I try to get a drink with once in a while and say, what are you seeing out there right now? Where's the market going? How's your staffing? Is it hard to hire? That kind of thing. So, those are all.
I'd like to put in a good word for small firm forum, because these kind of questions can come up anytime, any meeting. And it might be a formal situation, or it might just be somebody you're sitting next to. But I think the membership of the group has just a very deep understanding of and coming from a lot of different places. So they can give you some pretty good ideas about a lot of the people there have bootstrapped their way up and made mistakes along the way, and they can tell you how they got to where they are. And one thing that I wanted to add, just because like Kurt, I came from 10 years of design build, and to me it's invaluable that an architect, or it just adds another entire level of knowledge. If you can know how to talk construction, know how to talk to contractors, respect contractors, know what when they're bullshitting you, when their opinions count, and whether it's just doing a project on your own house that's visible in the neighborhood, or helping somebody else, volunteering, to do a project at church or school or whatever. I think the more that you can have hands-on construction and eyes on construction, and very, very valuable thing to do. So when you have some questions, you can't get answers, come to small firm forum, maybe somebody can help you.
And then I think we had a question here in the room.
I don't know if it's a question as much as like, I've heard a lot of things that resonate with me in all these conversations. My name is Annette. My background is basically in the last 2 years I've been freelancing. Rachel knows me. Rachel. And I just remember the first year being very emotional, because I was struggling with a lot of the self-worth piece. Like, I came out of big firms and I'm like, can I do this? Do I know what I'm doing? There's a lot of self-doubt over like a permit application or a planning application, or I'm like on the phone with the client and I'm like, yeah, I'll submit this to planning. And I'm like, shit, I don't know what I'm doing. But I feel like that the 2 years that I've spent kind of like down the crap chute, but I got to make it work, have been way better than 7 years fooling around in firms, like trying to be seen, trying to do more, trying to like leverage myself and take on more with the project. I just couldn't get it with firms for whatever reason. I know everybody has a different path, and some people are able to accomplish things with firms. I was not able to. And I feel like I just take on these really small remodel projects that it's like my cousin or my friend or my friend's friend, and they only come to me if they know me, and it's just been so instrumental in like building my confidence. And then all of the billing and invoicing, I've just been doing it myself. And I just gotta say, like, the fear and the worry, you just have to be comfortable with those things being there for a while. Because for the first at least year and a half, there was fear and worry all the time. And I was like crying a lot, not sure if I was gonna make it. And then I would just get this phone call, like just in the past like 2 weeks, I got like 4 or 5 phone calls about small projects, but I'm like, maybe I can keep going, maybe I can still make this work. So I think you've got to put your neck out, and the fear and worry, like if you keep letting them be the dominant thing, you will never, nothing will ever happen. So you have to just be comfortable that those things are going to be there. And then you have to just like put your neck out. And then once your neck is out, then you have to start making decisions about what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept. And you have to be willing to have conversations with other people who stuck their neck out and say, am I charging enough? Should I be looking for this type of project? Is this dangerous? Do you know this client? Tell me how to get a good consultant. The worst thing is working with bad consultants and bad contractors. And so it's like all that takes time. And if you don't just like start, it's just like the narrative in your head just gets bigger and bigger, and you just get stuck. And then you're working in a firm for like 20 years and you're like, what am I doing? So I feel like you're better off just, you know, taking a few small projects at night and putting your neck out and trying to see if you can like show yourself that you're capable and that you're ready, because that's number one. You have to see yourself. And then after that, you have to go like hunt, be ready. So I don't know if I have questions, but I just been hearing things that resonate, like the self-worth. And then there's something that you said along the way too about trust, not only with contractors, with your clients, with consultants. Relationships are at the core of like good business. And I just like, I don't know, I'm just super grateful for these 2 years down the crapshoot. Like, this has been so formative. I'm like a different person. So I just want to
Lined up with
encourage
COVID too
the
well.
community. Yeah, the COVID too. Yeah.
Like it wasn't hard enough.
Yeah,
already.
exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're doing great
I mean,
and
I
really
stepped out
doing the right thing.
because I have a young son, and I didn't want to go back to a firm and work a 40, 50-hour work week.
Right.
Like I wanted to be with him.
Right.
So not saying that this method was any easier. It was still like so emotional and so hard, but I was able to be more present for my family in a way that I wouldn't have if I went back to a firm.
And you're building something that's all yours.
Yeah.
Right? You control it. You build it for yourself. You
Sometimes it's a
choose
good
how to
thing,
expand it.
Sometimes it's a bad thing.
Well,
But
yeah.
mostly it is.
Yeah,
That's
nothing
very
is, nothing's
empowering.
100%, you know, anyway. I like what you're saying, because that resonated for me, because I just never liked working for other people. My wife teases me, she goes, you couldn't even work in a building. You know, if you had to like commute somewhere and go into a building, no matter how nice it was, you'd be miserable.
Yeah.
And it's so true. It's like, I just want to make my own rules and do things my own way.
I'd like to put in the good word.
That's worth all the risk.
Yeah.
It sounds like it is for you too.
Yes.
I'd like to put in a good word for fear and worry, because
Yeah.
unlike
Yeah.
my colleagues here who said a lot about confidence, I live my life in fear personally. And I think that it's worked pretty well. I mean, but I do think it's a tool, like, you know, the fear will drive you to make things happen. I mean, I think it's challenging because, you know, it's like, it is great to be able to say, you know, I'm not going to take a client if they don't meet my standard, or if they're not a great builder, or if they don't appreciate good design or whatever it is. But as you do grow a firm, if that's the direction again, you know, it's like you've got payroll to make, and it's like, this is the client I've got sitting in front of me right now, and I need to make a decision about, again, the complications of things, you know, and billing and whatever else, I've got to either I take this client, or is this opportunity cost? If I don't take this client, then I take the time that I would have spent working on their project and, you know, do something better, find better client, you know, whatever it may be. But, you know, I always felt like when it was just me working, you know, I could, you know, it's like I didn't have overhead. You know, it meant if I took a $20,000 fee and I worked 10 hours and I made $2,000 an hour, or I worked 200 hours and I made 20 cents an hour, I still made money. It's just like, how much time did I put into it? But once you have payroll and rent and, you know, all the things that come along with it, you do start worrying about, you know, where the next job's coming. And sometimes, you know, it's not always optimal, you know, and there is, and fear does drive things. Like I've got to make payroll people to take care of, you know, I also have a kid, you know, and all the things, you know, that weigh on you. And so every project is not necessarily an ideal project. I would say out of like all my clients, all my projects, you know, maybe 10% are what I would love to have all of them be.
Well, I take a lot of projects that aren't ideal, like, but now, you know, I'm never going to do another accessory building. Because, I mean, I had one in Sausalito. It was just a change on one of the walls. We had to have a soils engineer, a survey, a geotechnical engineer. I mean, it was crazy. Yep, Sausalito, avoid it. Tiburon, avoid it. But I've done some bigger projects there, and they were, you know, really great. But there is a line. Like if a client just doesn't, you know, I can work with a difficult client, but only up to a point. And yeah, that's a line that takes a long time to figure out.
Yeah, you don't know. You know, it's like, okay, what are the red flags? Like I've actually just discussed with the studio recently that we need to make a red flag list. Like, so that when somebody comes in, if they, you know, what are the buzzwords that you want to watch out for if they start saying, you know, I want to do a really cheap building, so your fee needs to be low, red flag.
I had a client try to get me to lower my fees in the middle of a project that was getting, you know, more and more expensive. And he was, you know, he was whining at me that he had managed to get everybody else to lower their fees. He got the contractor to do it and the cabinet person to do it. And this was a job that had gone pretty sideways. There was a lot of incompetence. You know, it was a job that did have some red flags, but I took it anyway. And the client was in charge of all these people who gave him a deal and then did really bad work. And the job spun out sideways for a long time and got very expensive. And so he really got mad at me, and he was really squeezing me like, you're the only one that always gets paid. And I said, look, I hire somebody else, right? I'll be happy to turn over the drawings, the files, I'll help you, I'll facilitate, you know, just hire somebody else, but there's no way I'm going to do it for cheaper. And he goes, well, no, I can't hire anybody else. You're the only guy who knows what he's doing. And I was like, well, duh. You know, thank you for making my case. I'm still not going to lower it. And he also played the dangled the carrot of, he was a real estate, you know,
next one.
He was a realtor and he's a salesman. He's like, you need to do me a solid on this job because you want me to be happy and to give, you know, your name to my friends and to call you when I do my next house that I really want to do. You know, this isn't my dream house. My dream house is going to be twice as big. And I used the thing I just said to you earlier, which is, I'm like, no way. You're going to squeeze me on this one and you're going to go find somebody else to squeeze or somebody you like better on the next one. And I'm like, no way. So I'd love to do your next house, but I don't really care. My obligation is to do this one well, and your obligation is to pay me what you agreed. And he accepted all of it. It was pretty weird. You know, like he acted this out because he does it all the time because he's a real estate deal maker. And he just pulled out like every knife he could find. And I was just like, no. And, you know.
Did you get the next house?
Huh?
Did you get the next house?
No. But actually, you know what? Almost. Because then he dug a pool and he wanted a cabana. And I was shocked and he asked me to do it. And then COVID hit and just kind of killed everything. So I don't really know if he's done the next house or if he got, sort of stuck in that one.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, by the way, my name is Mario,
Mario?
and I also went to Cal and other places, well, some other places in the East Coast. I am currently a partner for a small firm in, we're based out of San Francisco, but my partner's working out of Marin County and I'm working out of Oakland. Everything's remote for most of us. It's only two people firm. But what I wanted to say is that it seems that your years of experience allow you to be so secure about your work. Does that make sense? When you were able to tell the developer, sorry, man, I'm not gonna lower my fees. I know what I'm worth. I know the type of work I produce. And I think it goes back to what she was saying, which is, you put in the work, you put in the time, and then you build up confidence. There's gonna be slips and falls. But I've noticed that like working, at least now bringing it back to my firm and my friends, the way we work, he's much older, so he's kind of like passing down the knowledge and the firm to me. But I've noticed, and this is me seeking advice from you guys, that he's not hungry for the big well that's not indicated, and I am, but he's the one bringing the clients right now since I just left my firm in the city 2 years ago. So I'm trying to figure out how do I manage with being hungry myself and seeing that my partner is more like, I'm just doing it to not let the firm die and pass it on to you at some point. So I just feel like I get excited, and then when I talk to him about business growth, I just kind of don't get so excited about the partnership. So I'm in that dilemma of, do I stick around or just completely go solo? But I think that going solo would imply higher risk because we already have all the, law backing us up. By that I mean like the insurance, and he's got the client.
How long have you been in business? How much experience do you have?
So I've been with him 2 years, and I have about 10 years of architectural experience.
And do you have
mainly residential, high-end, multi-million dollars, Menlo Park, this and that.
Is it a legal partnership? Do you have a S corp with him or LLP, or what's the?
It's not a legal partnership yet. So there's an agreement, but I never really legally converted myself into a partnership. So when we go to see clients, we call each other client, like he's my partner, I'm his partner. But yes, legally everything's under his name, if that makes sense.
So he pays you.
Yes.
You're his employee legally.
Yes, legally, yeah. So I guess it's not a partnership then.
No, it's not. And then
Yeah.
run the fantasy for a minute. If you went out on your own,
Yeah.
are you confident you would have some work? Are you dependent on this guy who's tired of everything to provide you work, to feed you?
Yes, simple answer is yes.
So it sounds like the only worry about leaving him is you won't get fed.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you seem confident and like you've got enough experience that maybe you could be drumming up in all those other ways we talked about through networking and talking to people, especially now, because there's too much work around now, right? I'm in your niche, the multi-million-dollar residential, and there's too much work. I say no to jobs.
Yeah.
And I know people who say, anybody want this job? Like, the work is around.
So Kurt, don't you think there's another possible answer here, which is, you said earlier, don't undersell yourself, get what you're worth.
Yes.
With this guy, I mean, my advice, sit down with them tomorrow and say, look, I'm not happy.
Right.
If you die tomorrow, I lose everything. I've
Yeah.
got 2 years invested. I'm worth it. Let's do a deal and do the deal by this date. And he's either going to be like, oh, I can't do it. And then you'll really see he's never going to do the deal.
Yeah.
You know, because you're assuming so much risk right now. You really are just his employee.
Yeah.
So you want to find out sooner rather than later if your dream is attached to this firm, and it sounds like you've got emotional, investment in 2 years in. That would be my first suggestion, which is yes or no, or is it yours or not? And if so, how do I get there? Then work towards that, because that'll be great. If you go home that night and you can't go to sleep because you're iffy, then I think it's time to, hang out a shingle and get out.
Yeah.
But if you are going to do,
You're just on hold.
Yeah, figure out if this really is like a succession, right?
Yeah.
Agreement in this firm. Like, is this firm coming to you through him? Is he stepping aside and allowing you to rise up? Because if he's not, you're treating yourself well enough.
I would add, though, to be cautious if you really do want to start your firm and that is your objective and you're going to launch out on your own, you need to make some kind of plan. I mean, there may be lots of work right now. Everybody has seen inflation, interest rates rising, the Oakland market for residential is saturated. I mean, it depends on where you're looking, and maybe ultra rich people building 10,000 square foot houses don't worry about interest rates, but they also don't generally go to somebody that doesn't have a portfolio of work and a website. It's like you need to position yourself and be ready to do that and have something you can do. I know different people are different things. My friend Mark Hogan at Open Scope in the city, he was a Revit consultant for quite a number of years before he kind of really got his practice up and running. I was teaching part-time and I did some drafting work for various people part-time to kind of make ends meet for a while. It's like, if you don't have the first client already in hand, you have to have a plan to sort of get that thing on life support until you can get it up and running and moving, and that can be a number of different things. I don't know how you guys did it when you first started, if you had clients in hand or if you had other jobs or what, but.
Thanks. And we have just a few minutes left. So there was a question in the chat we want to make sure we get to, and that was from Sarah May Parker saying, is there a community of women similar to what Annette was talking about, who can, especially women with young children or something, who might want to, meet and, share information about starting firms like that. So what I think is interesting, Linda talked about Small Firm Forum, and of course we have the Young Architects, and we're always looking in all these groups to keep evolving them and modernizing them and all that. So that could be a great subset of any of those groups.
Is there an organization of women's architects? Is there still that? Organization of Women Architects?
There's mothers.
Yes, there is. I'm part of it. They're great.
Yeah, Sarah, did you have anything, or Sarah May, did you have anything else you wanted to say about your comment?
No, this is a good answer. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think I'm always thought I would own my own firm, but I'm starting to realize I'm more interested in owning a business and being in control and self-employed. And the architecture part is like, well, I happen to be an architect at this point in my life. I'm not like ready to die about so I'm kind of like, okay, it's going to be like consulting or some other, how to have a small business, and maybe later on a big firm. But anyway, that's kind of the model I was interested in hearing about. And anyway.
Sarah May, can you drop in the chat the name of the organization so that we have that on record?
Oh yeah.
Thank
and
you.
Also, I know several or quite a few women sole practitioners, some that have passed through my studio. If you wanted to email me, I could connect you with them. One is, I think Maya is there in the studio today right now.
There you go.
Maya, if I can give your email address out.
All right, and does Tim have a final word for us?
Yeah, I didn't realize we were up against it. So maybe I'll just hold my question, or I can email the group later. Just a big thank you to Kurt, Matt, Deborah. Appreciate you guys taking your time to come out and share your stories, your advice, your tips. I mean, this is invaluable and priceless to sit here and listen to you guys, and hoping we can do this again sometime soon. And Linda and Donald, thank you guys for helping us organize this. This was a great event. I appreciate it. I guess my one big question at the end, I had a couple here, but and maybe just a one-word answer. What's your biggest challenge in terms of being a firm owner, someone that has responsibilities to others, or maybe as a sole proprietor? Is there, what's your biggest challenge when you look back or take a step back? Thanks again. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is going to be an exhibit.
Exactly.
For pleading.
Yeah, of course.
What's your biggest challenge?
I think it's keeping the work flowing.
Get the job.
Jobs, yeah, that's the lifeblood, right? You're dead in the water without the work. And like we talked about, the work has teeth. Sometimes it can bite you, but you just have to engage and get the work.
And there are different solutions to that too, finding clients, but also, like, as I said, we've done real estate development deals. We have a few properties. I mean, that's a way to get your own, you can be your own client. Other people, I think there are a number of solutions, like I said, being a consultant on the side, whatever it is, but yeah, maintaining the cash flow and keeping the doors open, however, by hook or by crook.
I wouldn't change it, just for what it's worth. Years later, looking back and all the anxiety I went through, I wish there was less of that, but I still wouldn't change it. I mean, I love the path of having your own business and being in control of these things. Even with the fear and the sleepless nights and different worries and battles, but it's also very satisfying. The risk comes with really good rewards.
I would add to that also challenge getting the work, keeping the work flowing, but planning departments. And not getting them to, like, can you just tell me what you want and stop changing the rules on me, or that's not a good idea.
All right, you opened this can of worms. You and I talked about this at the beginning too, okay? Don't play defense, play offense. We're all very good at this. We are not the kind of people that are out to build crappy stuff and ruin neighborhoods. On the other side of the desk are planners who deal all day with people through either ignorance or maliciousness, are ruining neighborhoods and the city. That's not us. The job is to just convince/remind them that's not me. You find your common ground. Make it clear to them you understand what's important to them. This is true with clients too. And then you've got common ground through like an empathy. And then you explain why your idea is excellent.
Well, the interesting thing about that bigger picture, when you say planners, it's funny, but relationships with planners, relationship with building department officials, inspectors, clients, contractors, staff, and good people around you. Like, if the challenge is definitely, basically like, okay, yeah, I get the job. But don't know if I'd call it a challenge, but I would say one of the most important things that I have to do is maintain relationships, like keep good people in the studio, keep relationships with good clients, contractors, all that kind of planners, especially.
Yeah.
You can buy them gifts up to $20, by the way.
1995.
Yeah. Great. Thank you all
everyone.
for paneling, and thanks, Matt, for letting us use your space.
Yeah.
This is great.
Thank you, Young Architects Forum, AIA, Small Firm Forum.
It feels like we could do this for hours.
Oh,
Yeah. Seriously.
So maybe we need a support
Matt's
group.
not here to kick us out. So.
Yeah.
Here there's a lot of food, so
Rachel, you said nothing.
I thought about saying a few things, but we're out of time. So
No. Rachel,
Thank
real good.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna go pass out now. I'm exhausted.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.